Okay, hey folks, Mark Locklear here with a quick screencast on Chapter 15, Inheritance, or How to Work with Inheritance is the title of the chapter. So this idea of inheritance is a sort of a more advanced data concept, and the idea is that you're creating this sort of hierarchy of data and attributes. And for this exercise, I think what we're going to do is, I'm sort of working, if you look at the example on page 575, they use the product, they use the example of the product class, so the parent class. And again, we talk about hierarchy, we're talking about this parent versus child. You also hear it called sort of class and subclass being the child. An example on page 575 is they have a product is the parent class, and then book and movie are going to be subclasses. And book and movie inherit attributes and methods or functions from the parent class, which in this case is the product class. So I think what we're going to do is, rather than coding, I was going to consider coding up the animal class, but I think that's a little bit it's just tough to watch me code and try to sort of talk into it. So I think what we're going to do is create a UML diagram. I'm using this app called Creately, and I think that's what one of the assignments is going to be, is for you to use Creately. You're going to create your own class, but before we do that, let's just have a walk through. Let's have a walk through looking at our animal class, and then we're going to create a couple of subclasses or child classes of the animal class. So hopefully this looks familiar based on your coding assignment last week, and your coding assignment last week looks sort of like this. Remember, this is the animal class that we created. And just a quick review here is we've got a couple of private attributes, name and type. We had a constructor that we created, and then we had getters and setters for the class, and then we also had a public, these were private attributes, and then we also had a public attribute called test. And so this is a UML diagram, a UML diagram of the animal class. And so let's go ahead and apply some inheritance to this animal class. So in thinking about inheritance, what we need to think about is, one of the ways to think about it is this is a model, and you say, is this thing, is it a animal? In this case, is this thing an animal? So I think what we're going to do is create child classes for both mammal and reptile, because mammals and reptiles are both animals. So you would say a mammal is a animal, but not necessarily, or yeah, you say a mammal is an animal. Now, mammal and reptile, you can't say a mammal is a reptile is a mammal. They're sort of on the same level, but they both are going to inherit attributes from this parent class. And in fact, we're going to modify some of these a bit. But in doing that, let's go ahead and create a new class here. And this class is going to be our mammal class. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this name here, mammal. And so now we think about attributes for a mammal. So our attributes here should be very specific to mammals, right? They shouldn't be so broad that they would also apply to animals. And then they also shouldn't be so specific. They also shouldn't be broad enough that they might apply to other kinds of animals, like a reptile or something like that. So these are going to be very specific to just a mammal. So, and this actually brings up a good point. I was thinking about this while I was working on this exercise, is that as software developers and as engineers too, I mean, this is going to go for our engineers in the class. Part of your job is to get into the mind of other people's domains. And what I mean by that is, even, and then again, this is an engineering thing, it's not just a software thing. If I'm trying to, I grow hops in my garden, hops to make beer with and cider. And there are hop harvesters out there, right? So an engineer might be asked to create a hop harvester that will maybe feed hop vines into some kind of mechanical device that's going to then strip hops from it and it's going to harvest those. And so to be able to solve that problem, you're going to have to go out and talk to somebody who grows hops. You're going to have to go look at hops, see how they grow before you can actually build a mechanism to do it, right? I mean, that's the sort of mechanical engineering side. In the software engineering world, think about all the different kinds of software you can write. You can write for the healthcare field, human resources, data, just general data management. And for all of those fields, for instance, in the healthcare field, if you're being asked to work on an electronic medical system, part of your job is going to have to go talk to doctors, talk to nurses, understand what their job is, understand how they use that data, how they interact with it. You have to understand all those things before you can actually write systems that are going to manage that. So in this case, we're looking at biology type stuff. And so what are some characteristics of a mammal? Well, I'm not sure about that, but Aunt Google is out there and she'll probably be able to tell us that. So if I go here and I'm going to say attributes of mammals. And if I click this link, I can sort of look through and maybe it'll give me some ideas here. So let's close this. So mammals are endothermic vertebrates. They have hair and fur on their body. Okay, that's maybe giving me some ideas. They have glands. But one of the things, obviously I've previously already looked at this, one of the things I noticed was reproduction types. And let's see, let me Google reproduction. Well, that's not coming up. Let me put you on pause for a second. Let me find the area I was looking for. Okay, here's the link I was actually looking at previously. But one of the things I noticed here is there are three, you can sort of barely see it down here, but it says there are three ways mammals can reproduce. These are placental mammals, marsupials, and monotremes. I don't know what any of those things are, but that sounds like something that's ripe for an attribute for a class. So in this case, we're going to create a reproduction. So this is our mammal class, and then we're going to create an attribute here called reproduction. And this would just be a text or a string field. We could even use an enumerable, which we talked about earlier in the semester, so you would limit the choices people would have. But generally, this reproduction would be one of those three types of reproduction that I just talked about. I was reading through that article earlier too, and then diet was another thing I noticed. Right, mammals can be they can eat meat, they can be vegetarians. I think omnivores is a term, so they can be herbivores, omnivores, or you can be both. Maybe omnivores is both. But anyway, there's a couple of options for diet there too. So again, these would be all attributes of mammals that attributes for mammals that we might list. And then we won't do any methods or functions, but obviously you'd have getters and setters for these. And then there may be some functions that might be specific to mammals, right? And again, the reproduction or birth, you know, animals can give birth all different kinds of ways, and that's a way to classify animals. So that, you know, birth is sort of an action or a verb that you might take, so you could create a function for that. So I think that's good enough for mammal. Let's think about our other one. So our other one we said is going to be reptiles. So, and then let's see, this tool gives you a nice handy way to create a nice arrow here. So we could do something like this, and then we could put a little arrow on it, and then we need to reverse it. All right. So the idea is there, a mammal is, actually, this is generally the way it's done, where the arrow points from the child class up to the parent class. It's always made more sense to me that it flows down, but generally when you see it from a documentation standpoint, this is the way it's done. So that's the way we'll do it here. And then we'll do the same thing here. Let's go ahead and put an arrow in place. Do that. There we go. So we said this is going to be a reptile. And then I did some research on reptiles earlier, and skin type is one of the things that I saw that are sort of specific to reptiles. So let's do skin underscore type. And then I was also looking at, let's do attributes of reptiles. So I was looking at this too. This under types, they've got there are 4 groups or types of reptiles, and then they've got turtles, squamatia or squamata, which is lizards and snakes. So, and even I'm seeing that squamata could be a child class of reptile, and then underneath that you could even have lizards and snakes, right? So you can see this idea of a hierarchy you're starting to form. And then they've got crocodilians here, and so then yeah, so there's a couple of options. We're just going to do type. That looks ripe for type, and so we'll do just type. That name, that attribute's a little bit ambiguous, right? If you were to see it some, so I'm going to be a little more specific with it and say reptile underscore type. And of course, that begs the question back up in this parent class. We originally had type up here, and I think the way I explained that last week is type in this class, when it sort of lived on its own, would have been, you could say, mammal or reptile, but we'd obviously want to get rid of that now that we've got these specific animal types that we're going to be inheriting to. So we'll get rid of that. So it would look something like this. Okay. So I just thought I'd do this just to be able to talk about this concept conceptually without the code getting in the way. And I mean, generally, this is a good way to do software development. So you're sort of divorced from the coding process first, so you can just think logically about the classes and attributes and various things. So using a UML tool like this can be handy. I'm going to put a link to this creately.com. You don't need an account to use this. I'm using just a free version of it here. Now, if you want to export it, there are export options. You have to have an account, because if I choose one of these, and it prompts you to sign in. So you can do that if you want, or for your assignment that I'm going to give you, you can just do a screenshot and just share the screenshot of your class and child classes that you built. So your assignment is going to be, I'll have that in Moodle, but is going to be to build your own build your own hierarchy of classes. What I'm going to be, and I have more details in the Moodle post, but I'm going to ask you to create a class and then have some child classes there, and get creative with it, and use a domain area that you know about. If you're into, I mean, there's a million different things you could do, right? If you know cars real well, cars could be a way. You could have car at the top, or automobile at the top, and then you could have sedan or two-door. If you were, if you're a beautician, or someone who cuts hair, you could have salons, such that you've got a salon at the top, and then maybe more specific type of businesses that would inherit from that parent class. But the idea is that you've got these more general, you've got this general class at the top that has these general attributes and methods that are going to be assigned to that class, and then the child class is going to inherit those methods. Okay, so that's all for now. As always, let me know if you have questions, and good luck.